Living with Autism, My Life with God, Me, and Melvin. I was a child that was set aside, no word of encouragement, and not many dreams to fulfill. I was stagnant until Melvin came into my life. I was 19, graduated from a business college, had a full-time job, and I was pregnant. I was not going to have an abortion. Somehow, I must find a way to have my baby and keep him. I was insecure and fearful. I was afraid of my mother and what she would do. My mother is strong-willed and overbearing. She would impose her will upon you, right or wrong. If you did not do as she said, she would tell you that nothing good will happen for you. God will punish you. To say I was afraid of her would put it mildly. I was terrified. I was concerned about what she would do to me. Her words could hurt just as the blow to my head. My mother's love is complicated. I remember how she told my oldest sister to have an abortion. I decided to hide my pregnancy as long as I could. I would deal with the consequences later. I remember when I first felt his movements. I was coming from work on the train. It felt like butterflies. I smiled. I needed a doctor to confirm my pregnancy. The boyfriend took me to the Planned Parenthood. I was examined. I never had a pap test before, so I was unclear about what would happen. I don't recall if the person was a nurse or a doctor. It was the fall of 1974. I was nervous. When I was called into the exam room, the standard procedure was to take off my clothes and put on a gown. She came into the room, asked me questions, and then began the exam. At the end of the exam, she balled her fist and rammed it inside of me. My body shook like jello. She stated she needed to see how many centimeters I was. I now believe this was not the concern. I was about 6 weeks. I believe she attempted to interrupt the pregnancy. One thing for sure, I was not going back to that place. I left the building and told him what happened, including the first incident. He didn't care. He just wanted the confirmation of me having a baby. I was pregnant. What to do? I did not tell my mother. She figured it out. I was married 3 months before delivery. I wanted to believe it will all work out for the better. The ideal life is a home with a white picket fence, 2 children perfect in every way. You envision your children growing up, going to college, getting a well-paying job, marrying, and having at least 2 kids. These ideals always surface when you have your firstborn. What happens when that is not the case? What do you do? What happens when your spouse points the finger and says, it must have been something you have done, or your in-laws begin to whisper that the child is not his, or this came from her side of the family, or she slept with her stepfather. That is why. What do you do when your own family is silent? No words like, can I help? Or, do you need someone to talk to? Or, I'm free. I'm here for you. What do you do when all fingers are pointing at you and accusing you by saying, I know you. I know you. I know you, they said. Yes, I know you. You don't know me, was my reply. You don't know me. These are the reasons why. Were you there when the tears fell from my eyes? Were you there when I was told the hope I had for him could never be? Were you there when the despair cast a shadow over me? Were you there when I fell to the floor in grief? Were you there to comfort and give me some peace? Were you there when he began to speak? This is something I was told could never be. Were you there when my heart burst with joy like a shooting star flying across the sky? Were you there when my hope for him began to spring up within me? Were you there when he spoke to me and began to direct the way? Were you there when he turned my sorrow into joy? Christ was there for me through it all. Christ was there before the teardrops began to fall. Christ was there, I tell you, through it all. Christ spoke words of encouragement to me. Believe me when I say, Christ is the Father of us all. Who knows me? He knows me. He knew me when I was formed in my mother's womb. He knows my every need and all my heart's desire. He knows the plans for Melvin and me. In him I trust. In him I call and depend. Who knows me? He who created all things. To say the least, this was going to be a great challenge for me. No support from either family, except for my aunt-in-law who lived in Northern California. How do you begin to help when you don't know the way to go? This was a challenge to my faith in God. On this journey, Jesus Christ was teaching me his eternal promise. I will never leave you nor forsake you. This is a story about the birth and life of my autistic son, born in the 1970s. Christ was taking the opportunity to heal a broken-hearted young woman who grew up in a volatile, abusive home, to begin a healing journey and rewrite a new life story. This journey began with Melvin.